I remember when I visited Barbara at her apartment. We spent about an hour there talking, and she shared a great deal about herself and stories. She and her husband used to travel a lot. She told me of times when they were in Paris and the food they ate and the sights they saw. She talked about Italy and South America. She talked about being in China and visiting there, all over the world. And we had a great time talking as she looked animatedly to me for reassurance that I was listening, and I was. It was interesting to hear these stories. And it didn't matter that she had to ask my name time and again. And it didn't matter that she had to ask if I was married and had a daughter, or how long I had been at the church I had been in. It didn't matter that her husband died 20 years ago, but because for her, he's still fresh in her mind, as if he's there with her presently. These things did not matter. It did not matter for me one iota, because she loved her life as she lived it. And as we left, as I gave her communion and we said the Lord's Prayer together in unison, I left feeling a bit better about the mission of Christ and what faith is all about. Barbara, as you may have guessed, had an advanced case of Alzheimer's and dementia and couldn't remember the near past. All she could really remember, it was the distant past. And I think sometimes we have it reversed. Sometimes we think of the near or the present only, and we forget about the distant past. Do you remember the 9/11 bombings, the 9/11 disaster? Do you remember Vietnam, what that was like? Do you remember the Great Depression? Do you remember the Roman Empire? Do you remember Genghis Khan? Do you remember all these things in the past that have been done and were happening, and how they pepper the present, how they play into what's happening now? Sometimes we suffer from nearsightedness rather than long-term memory. A friend of mine said, we've forgotten about history. We've forgotten what it was like in the past, so we can learn from them. We don't make the same mistakes over and over again. If we knew our history, if we knew what was going on, maybe we wouldn't make so many mistakes again. As a child, I grew up having the game. It was a board game with cards. It was called Husker Du. Anybody remember Husker Du? You know, and it's just a memory game, you know, and you flip cards over face down, then you pick one card up and you see a branch or something. You pick another card, there's a sun. Pick another card, there's another branch. You know, where was that branch card? You can't remember where it was. You know, in Norwegian it means remember you. Do you remember? I remember playing that game and thinking, this is you build on your memory skills. And that's how great that is. I'm finding as I get older, I'm losing it too. I went to a 40th birthday party and somebody said, yeah, Brent, what's your sister-in-law's name over there? And I said, that's Kristen. No, your other one. And I looked at her. And I tried to by association, Brian and it took me about 20 seconds. Oh yeah, Cindy, that's right. I'm only 45 years old. What's going to happen next? I better do more crosswords and things like that. They tell you to build your memory and your mind and things. But it's important to remember that there are different kinds of ways of remembering. Jesus, in the lesson that we read, the gospel that we read, the women that came into the tomb saw this empty tomb and were dumbfounded. What? Hey, aren't we missing something here? Isn't there supposed to be a body or something? We came with all this oil and spices and wrap. No. And then someone had to remind them, oh, by the way, do you remember what Jesus told you? This is what's going to happen to me. I'm going to be handed to sinners, crucified, died, but then on the third day, which is today, I'm going to rise and it'll be gone. Do you remember that? And then you can see something in their minds click. Oh, that's right. That's right. And so they went back to the other disciples to tell them exactly that the prophecies, what Jesus told them was true. Do you remember? The keys to the puzzle. If you look in the Gospel of Mark, the shortest Gospel, probably the first one written, you'll notice that it says oftentimes Jesus' identity is secret. They call it the Messianic secret. Because any time a demon would say, "You're Jesus Christ, the Son of the ever-living God," Jesus would rebuke the demon and say, "Be quiet. Don't say anything. Don't tell anybody." Why did he do that? Why did he want to keep it a secret until the very end? Well, it's like getting that last puzzle piece. You put that puzzle piece in, and all of a sudden you can see the whole picture. The resurrection of Jesus is the same way. You get that resurrection piece, then all of his life and all of his ministry makes sense. It all fits together. It's like those Columbo shows. Remember in the 70s, Columbo, Peter Falk? You know, he'd ask questions to the one who actually did the murder. He'd ask him questions, and then as he's leaving, "Oh, by the way," and then he'd ask one more question. The zinger, usually. And all the pieces would fit together. We have memories of the past when we were growing up. Some of them are very good. Some of them aren't so good. We're going to kind of push those off. But we remember maybe not to do these things to our families in the future. A saying goes sometimes when we get into a situation where we're climbing the corporate ladder or we're in an office in politics or some kind of high